Chapter 3. Why Plugins Aren't the Solution. Properly implementing a responsive web design takes some rethinking about how you want to display your website content. Transformations occur as screen size gets smaller, ultimately culminating into a single column. If you're used to thinking in 2 columns, main content plus sidebar, or even 3, as in a newspaper layout, figuring out how to transform down to 1 column takes a realignment in your thinking. Some WordPress plugins do attempt to get websites into a presentable form for mobile users. However, many plugins tend to mangle your site. Without some thorough confirmation what pages actually look like, you might initially get the impression that everything's okay. A word of caution: be sure to give your site a thorough check after installing a mobile-related plugin. Another drawback of plugins is they aren't consistent with your site's layout. This gives your website the appearance of 2 different sites. It isn't uncommon for a mobile website to look different from the full-blown desktop version. However, this is a mistake, as it degrades its brand. A responsive web design allows you to peel away some of the layers of your brand as you move your website's content into 1 column. But peeling away its layers is not the same as presenting a completely different look. Brands often present themselves differently in different contexts. The Apple logo on the lid of my MacBook Pro is smoky white and lights up. At WDC, the developers conference where Apple usually shows off upcoming products, the logo can be many different colors with lots of interesting detail. But the consistent logo outline is still very visible. The abstract element of our business we call brand is very fragile. Lots of work is required to continue building it and ensure no harm comes to it. Designing your site with a responsive web design in mind, rather than handing everything off to a plugin, can help ensure your brand remains healthy and consistent. Chapter 7. Measuring the cost of a responsive web design. Building a website from scratch is a great cost-benefit of responsive web design. It is less complex to implement a responsive web design on a new site than an old one. But more often than not, we're dealing with an existing complex website, one that likely has a heavily modified theme. This means we can't replace a theme. We're basically married to it going forward. The cost of replacing the theme and all the work that went into it would be substantial. In this case, the cost of creating a new responsive design website versus implementing it into our existing site needs to be measured. In considering cost associated with a new site, assuming you want very similar functionality that is probably not available in any stock theme, we need to recognize that we're not only rebuilding existing functionality, we're also implementing a responsive design. In most cases, the cost associated with rebuilding existing functionality will be higher than the responsive design cost. Depending on the theme chosen, existing functionality will be difficult to port over. This difficulty greatly increases if you go with a completely new framework. In that regard, I don't think a new framework adds much additional time, except that of learning how to use the new framework. When implementing a responsive web design into an existing site, much of the existing functionality can be saved, a great cost reduction. Because the responsive web design is a different architecture than that of the current theme, this is where our cost will be focused. Think of it like retrofitting an old English building with modern wiring. It can be a lot of work, but how much really depends on how the building was built. The more fixed widths and non-specific heights of elements, the more difficult it will be to implement a responsive web design, but that is the starting point. Some areas of the site won't be fixed with just a 100% width and height specification on elements. These areas will require new thinking and design. In summary, the more complex and large your site, the more savings will be realized when you implement a responsive web design instead of building and maintaining a mobile version.